Just 5 minutes ago, King Charles III delivered a tragic and unexpected announcement, revealing that he may be nearing the final days of his reign and life. The palace has confirmed the heartbreaking news, and across the nation, grief is spreading fast. The monarchy now faces a turning point. The sudden, shocking announcement. Just moments ago, Buckingham Palace released a devastating statement. King Charles III has made a tragic announcement regarding his final days. The language was clear, solemn, and left no room for speculation. The monarch has accepted that his time may be coming to an end. The news has stunned royal watchers, caught even seasoned insiders off guard, and shifted the mood of the entire nation almost instantly. This comes during a period already clouded by health concerns. For months, whispers about the king's condition, particularly following his cancer diagnosis in early 2024, had been circulating quietly. But no one expected this level of bluntness. A senior royal correspondent stated, "In over 30 years covering the monarchy, I've never seen a statement this direct about a sovereign's mortality." The impact was immediate. From London to Sydney, New Delhi to Toronto, reactions poured in. It's rare for a monarch, especially one with a legacy as complex and long-awaited as Charles's, to speak openly about death. The emotional tone of the announcement signaled more than medical decline. It reflected a monarch preparing his people for a historic transition. Insiders suggest the statement was carefully crafted. Some believe it's part of a larger effort to begin the handover process to Prince William, easing the nation into the idea of new leadership. Others think it was a deeply personal act, a final gesture of honesty from a man who, for most of his life, lived under immense public pressure. In just one statement, the mood has shifted from hopeful optimism to solemn uncertainty. And while the king remains on the throne for now, his words have opened a door that cannot be closed. The monarchy is no longer preparing. It is transitioning. And this announcement marks the beginning of an end that will shape the legacy of Charles III forever. Backstory: King Charles's cancer battle. To understand the weight of King Charles's tragic statement, we have to go back to February 2024, when the palace first revealed that the king was undergoing treatment for an enlarged prostate. But during that routine procedure, doctors discovered something far more serious: a form of cancer. The diagnosis sent shockwaves through Britain and across the Commonwealth. Immediately, his royal duties were scaled back. For the first time in decades, the king disappeared from public life for several weeks. His schedule emptied, and Prince William and Queen Camilla began stepping in more visibly. At the time, the palace assured the public that treatment had begun and his prognosis was encouraging. In April 2025, Charles made a rare, deeply personal video message in support of cancer patients, saying, "You are not alone. Together, we can face this." His words offered hope, and for a while, it seemed like things were improving. Reports from the palace claimed his health was moving in a positive direction, and Charles even resumed light duties by summer 2025. But by late 2025, the updates grew quieter. Public appearances became rare again. Some royal watchers noticed his weight loss, a more fragile appearance, and his absence from major events. Concerns quietly returned. Rumors began to swirl. Was the king really getting better? Or had the situation worsened behind the scenes? Now, with the announcement confirming his acceptance of final days, everything makes sense in hindsight. The silence, the slowing pace, the growing role of Prince William, it was all pointing to a decline the palace was not yet ready to fully share. This is not just a health battle. It's a chapter in royal history unfolding in real time. And while many had hoped for recovery, the king's own words now suggest the end is near, not just for a reign, but for a life defined by waiting, duty, and finally, vulnerability. What changed? Why now the final day's warning? For months, the palace had maintained a tone of quiet confidence. King Charles was undergoing treatment, responding well, and still committed to royal duties in a reduced capacity. But now, that message has shifted. His recent announcement about his final days wasn't made lightly. So what changed? According to multiple insiders and health commentators, the tipping point may have come in November 2025, following a series of complications linked to his ongoing cancer treatment. Though details remain private, it's believed that the king's condition entered a more advanced stage. Reports from sources close to the medical team describe a sudden change in resilience, both physically and emotionally. Adding to that, the king recently suffered a personal loss within his inner circle, someone described as a close friend and longtime confidant. That emotional blow, on top of months of grueling treatment, is said to have deeply affected his spirit. A royal staffer confided, "He's not giving up, but he's tired." He's starting to accept that he may not have years ahead, just months. This moment isn't just about health, it's about preparation. The tone of the announcement suggests a king looking ahead, not only to the end of his own reign, but to what must come after. Some sources believe this statement was designed to gently prepare the nation for the inevitable. It's a way to say goodbye without saying the word goodbye, said one royal historian. The palace, often careful and measured, may also be attempting to stay ahead of rumors. With Charles's absence growing more noticeable and speculation increasing across media, this announcement allows the monarchy to take control of the narrative, rather than risk a chaotic fallout later. Public reactions are already showing a divide, some still holding on to hope, praying for recovery, while others are beginning to grieve. The royal family, too, is reportedly split between keeping things normal for as long as possible and quietly beginning the transition process, especially with Prince William taking on more state responsibilities. Whatever the full truth behind the timing, one thing is clear: this was no routine update. King Charles has signaled a shift, not just in health, but in mindset. And that subtle but powerful change marks the beginning of a profound moment in royal history. Public reaction and nation's grief begins. The moment King Charles's statement about his final days was released, the emotional impact rippled across the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. The news hit hard, not just as a health update, but as a deeply personal moment shared by a monarch known more for duty than vulnerability. Within hours, hashtags like #ThankYouKingCharles and #RoyalFarewell began trending worldwide. News channels switched to rolling coverage, newspapers ran front-page tributes, and online platforms flooded with memories, prayers, and sadness. One citizen wrote on social media, "I never thought I'd cry for a monarch, but it feels like we're losing part of our history." That sentiment echoed across cities, towns, and generations. For millions, this wasn't just a public figure, it was their king, and his message felt like a personal goodbye. In cities like London, Edinburgh, and Cardiff, flowers began appearing outside royal residences. Church bells rang quietly in some areas, and community gatherings were held to reflect on the king's service. Many people, especially older generations who watched Charles wait for the throne for over 70 years, expressed deep sorrow, calling it the end of an era they've known their entire lives. The emotional response wasn't limited to the UK. In Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and across the Commonwealth, similar scenes unfolded. Official government statements acknowledged the gravity of the moment, with leaders praising the king's dignity, service, and courage in facing the public with such honesty. Yet for all the public mourning, there's also growing uncertainty. What does this mean for the monarchy? Who steps up next? How soon? These are the questions beginning to surface, quietly but urgently, as people process their grief. Still, amid the sadness, there's a collective pause, a moment of respect, unity, and reflection. Regardless of politics or opinions about the monarchy, King Charles's announcement has struck a deeply human chord. It's a reminder that even kings are mortal, and now the nation is beginning to grieve, not just for what may be lost, but for the man behind the crown who at last let the world see his fragility. The impact on the royal family. What it could mean for succession. Behind the palace walls, King Charles's announcement has done more than trigger public grief. It has accelerated conversations about the future of the monarchy. With the king himself acknowledging that his final days may be near, all eyes now turn to the man next in line, Prince William, Prince of Wales. Sources close to the family say that William has already begun stepping into key roles, quietly taking over more state responsibilities, managing briefings, and preparing for what insiders are calling a soft transition. While no official handover has taken place, the message is clear. Succession planning is underway. But this moment isn't just about the next king. It's about the entire family facing an emotional shift. Queen Camilla, who has remained by Charles's side throughout his health battles, is said to be deeply affected. Her public composure remains strong, but one aide said, "She knows what's coming. She's holding the family together behind the scenes." Other senior royals, including Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and even Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, are reportedly adjusting schedules to support the crown. Prince Harry, though physically distant, may also be drawn back into the fold in some capacity, at least temporarily, depending on how events unfold. There's also the issue of how Prince George, William's eldest son and future heir, is being emotionally prepared. Though still young, the reality of his grandfather's condition and what it means for the royal line is impossible to ignore. Palace insiders say the family is handling the situation with care, protecting the children from the storm, while slowly guiding them into understanding the weight of what's ahead. The monarchy now finds itself at a delicate crossroads. While Charles remains king, the spotlight is shifting from a sovereign in his final chapter to an heir preparing for his first. The emotional impact on the family is immense, but so is the responsibility of ensuring a seamless transition. One royal observer said it best: "The crown doesn't pause, but the people behind it do. And right now, they're mourning, preparing, and stepping into history at the same time." The emotional weight. King Charles as a human being, not an icon. For most of his life, King Charles III has been seen through the lens of duty, formality, and royal tradition. But with his announcement about his final days, the world is now seeing something else. A man confronting mortality with raw honesty. No titles, no ceremony, just truth. In his earlier message to cancer sufferers back in April 2025, Charles offered words of strength and solidarity. "You are not alone," he said then, his voice steady but emotional. Now, those same words ring even louder, not just for others, but for himself. His courage to speak openly about his declining health has humanized him in a way royal speeches rarely do. For many, this moment marks a shift. Charles is no longer just the king who waited 70 years for the crown. He is now a father, a grandfather, a man in pain, facing the final chapter of his life, in full view of the public. One royal commentator said, "This is the most vulnerable we've ever seen a monarch in modern history." People across the country are reflecting not just on his reign, but on his life, his long-standing environmental work, his passion for architecture, his commitment to the prince's trust, and his often overlooked efforts to modernize the monarchy quietly over decades. Things that once seemed overshadowed by scandal or formality are now being re-examined with fresh empathy. Even those who once criticized Charles are finding a new sense of connection. His openness about illness, his willingness to speak plainly, and his emotional presence have shown a different kind of strength, one that doesn't wear a crown, but feels deeply human. This isn't about legacy yet. This is about the man in the moment, a man who knows the end is near, but still shows up with dignity. A man who, after decades of waiting and duty, is now remembered not for the throne, but for the truth in his voice. And as the nation listens, perhaps for the last time, Charles is no longer just the monarch. He is simply Charles, and that may be his most powerful legacy of all. Media storm and speculation, facts, rumors, and fear. As soon as King Charles's tragic message was released, the media erupted into overdrive. Within minutes, headlines flooded every major outlet. King Charles admits time is running out. Palace confirms final days. And Prince William prepares for transition. But with the emotional truth came a dangerous wave: speculation, rumor, and fear. Mainstream channels tried to keep it factual, but tabloids quickly took a darker turn, with some claiming that Charles is spending his last Christmas, or that private farewell messages have already been recorded. One viral report even suggested that his funeral arrangements were quietly being reviewed under the code name Operation Manet Bridge, the official plan for the monarch's passing. Social media wasn't far behind. Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram lit up with tributes, tears, and theories. But, as usual, truth and fiction began to blur. Some posts claimed Prince Harry had been secretly called back. Others speculated about Camilla's role after Charles, or questioned whether William will take over sooner than expected. One royal expert noted, "Whenever the palace goes quiet, the public fills in the gaps, and sometimes they fill them with fear." Even respected journalists admitted they're working with limited information. The palace's carefully worded statement gave just enough to confirm concern, but not enough to settle nerves. This uncertainty has created the perfect storm, where facts get lost and emotion takes over. And with no regular updates coming, every public appearance or absence becomes a headline. If Charles misses a meeting, rumors explode. If he looks tired, questions erupt. The nation is now reading between the lines, interpreting silence as something much louder. In moments like this, the monarchy walks a fine line. Say too little, and panic grows. Say too much, and you risk losing control of the story. The palace knows this, and they're choosing silence. For now, but with the storm building and fear replacing facts, one truth remains: the world won't wait patiently. It wants answers. It wants reassurance. And most of all, it wants to know what's really happening behind those gates. What the palace might do next: control, silence, or preparation. With the king's emotional announcement now public, the palace is entering a phase it knows all too well: containment, and control. Behind the royal curtains, plans are already in motion. Sources say the response is being managed through a mix of measured silence and quiet preparation, a strategy used during past royal health scares, but never at a moment this critical. At the center of those plans is Operation Menai Bridge, the code name for King Charles's eventual passing. While it hasn't been activated, insiders say certain steps have begun. Senior staff briefings, logistical checks, and communications rehearsals. One aide shared, "It's not a matter of if anymore. It's about being ready when the time comes." Meanwhile, the palace has deliberately limited further medical updates. This silence serves two purposes: protecting the king's dignity and controlling the narrative. By speaking less, they avoid misinformation, but it also leaves the public in the dark. That's a calculated risk, and it's already causing unease. Prince William is reportedly attending private transition briefings, while Queen Camilla continues to manage the king's schedule behind closed doors. Charles's inner circle is now described as tighter than ever. Only a handful of senior aides and family members are aware of the full truth. But despite the palace's efforts to manage the message, leaks remain a threat. Staff turnover, emotional strain, and high media demand make it difficult to keep everything sealed. Some insiders fear that if information slips out, it could spark confusion or even public backlash, especially if the public feels misled. The challenge now is timing. The palace must decide when to speak, what to reveal, and how to support the nation emotionally. Too early, and it may feel forced. Too late, and the moment may spiral out of control. Ultimately, the monarchy's strength has always been in its structure, but never before has it faced such pressure to balance privacy, public expectation, and a global spotlight. The next move may come quietly, perhaps a change in roles or a formal statement from Prince William. But one thing is clear: the palace is preparing. The world is watching, and the final chapter is being written, even if not yet read aloud. What this means for the future of Britain: stability, change, or uncertainty. As King Charles signals that his time as monarch may be coming to an end, the question now stretches far beyond the palace walls. What happens next isn't just about the crown. It's about Britain's identity, stability, and how the nation will adapt to the next chapter of its royal history. The monarchy has long been a symbol of continuity in times of crisis, but this moment feels different. With Charles's reign barely 3 years old, the nation now faces a potential transition to King William far sooner than expected. And while William is widely respected, his style and vision differ from his father's. Younger, more modern, less bound by formality. That shift could bring both opportunity and risk. On one hand, the public might welcome a fresh, more relatable monarch. On the other, the rapid change in leadership, especially after Queen Elizabeth's 70-year reign, could feel destabilizing for those still adjusting to the loss of one monarch, let alone two. Beyond the royal family, this moment forces deeper national reflection. For many Britons, the monarchy is tradition, identity, and soft power. For others, it's a symbol in need of reform or retirement. A new reign may reignite debates about the future of the monarchy itself, especially among younger generations and across Commonwealth nations where support has already been declining. Internationally, too, questions are rising. How will foreign leaders engage with a new king? What happens to Britain's diplomatic influence rooted in royal history? And how will this moment affect the image of British leadership on the global stage? Inside the UK, emotions are divided. Some feel hopeful, believing William and Catherine represent a modern monarchy that can survive and thrive. Others fear that too much change, too fast, could weaken centuries-old structures that still hold cultural weight. One historian put it simply, "The end of a reign always marks a turning point." But two monarchs in less than 5 years? That's not just a change, it's a crossroads. And now, as the king prepares to step back, the country must ask itself, is Britain ready for what comes next? Or is it stepping into an uncertain era, where tradition and transformation collide like never before? Final thoughts: legacy, memory, and the big question: will history judge him differently? As the nation begins to process King Charles III's heartbreaking announcement, a deeper conversation is starting to unfold. How will he truly be remembered? For years, his legacy was shaped by headlines, waiting, and controversy. But now, in this moment of raw truth, people are starting to see him differently. He waited over 70 years to take the throne, the longest heir in waiting in British history. And yet, his reign may last only a few short years. Still, many are realizing that impact isn't measured in time, but in courage, humility, and leadership when it matters most. His willingness to face death with dignity and speak openly has touched millions. His work beyond the throne is also being re-examined. Decades of environmental advocacy, the creation of the Prince's Trust, and quiet efforts to modernize royal protocols. Things once overshadowed by gossip are now being seen for what they really were. Signs of a forward-thinking monarch who was never afraid to challenge tradition. Yet, his final chapter brings questions. Did he have enough time to complete his vision? Will the monarchy continue what he started, or pivot under Prince William's leadership? And will future generations understand the pressure Charles lived under for a lifetime? As one royal historian said, Charles may not be remembered for how long he ruled, but for how honestly he faced the end. That honesty may reshape how people talk about him, not as the man who waited too long, but as the king who showed the world what strength really looks like. Now, with history unfolding in real time, the public watches a rare moment. A monarch stepping closer to goodbye, not in silence, but in truth. And that truth may be the most powerful part of his legacy. Whether Britain remembers Charles as a reformer, a symbol of transition, or simply a father and grandfather who showed great heart, one thing is certain: he will not be forgotten. As the world comes to terms with King Charles's emotional farewell, Britain stands at the edge of royal history. The crown prepares for change. The people prepare for loss. One reign nears its end, and another begins to rise. In this moment, a nation mourns not just a king, but a man.